Hello, so welcome back to the Overwatch team files. Last time we looked at Runaway to kick off this series, and obviously Runaway, a storied history in Korea, massively storied history, and they came up from literally nothing. Literally an idea from Runner, who was a League of Legends streamer, came into Overwatch, and here we are now with one of the biggest dynasties in the Tier 2 scene. But now we are moving away from Korea, because we are moving to the EU for this one. This is Team Gigantti. So, Team Gigantti, they weren't formed when Overwatch was released. So, Team Gigantti were founded in 2017, August the 2nd to be precise. And this is a team that actually came in with backing, right? So Gigantti is a retail chain, an electronics retailer chain in Finland. And Team Gigantti is a Finnish team. It always was. And competed in the European region of Contenders quite obviously for a long time, crossing from pre-Overwatch League into the early days of the Overwatch League. And Team Gigantti, they had a knack of producing household names in the Overwatch EU scene and the Overwatch League in the end as well. With all of these names that I'll be quoting that have been part of Gigantti, you'll recognise them if you know the Overwatch League, most likely. Or if you've even been around the Overwatch esports team, you'll recognise a lot of these names. They've gone on to do quite good things in the Overwatch League, some of these players. And a lot of them actually, in fact, aren't around now. So it's almost a change of guard with what happened in the EU when Gigantti left. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. So, Gigantti was formed in 2017. And the first tournament it would compete in, or the team would compete in, would be the Aces ROG tournament of 2017, the summer one. And there, they would win it. They would win the tournament outright. And in typical Gigantti style, Gigantti hit the ground running in EU. It was pretty darn extraordinary. And then their first step, obviously, was to go into Contenders. Now, Contenders back in those days looked very different to what we see now with Contenders. Its branding was a lot like Open Division. This was Season 1 Europe in 2017. And they were mixed in with teams like eUnited, 123, Cloud9 EU, Team Singularity, Bazooka Puppies, Gamers Origin, and Misfits. And these were massive names. And to put this in perspective, like Misfits, this was the days before the Florida Mayhem, obviously. So this was the days with Zebasai and Swoosh and Maniton, Tvik, Logix. When you see Gamers Origin and they had Leaf, Poco, Benbest, Hip. Names we've heard in the Overwatch League a lot. Team Singularity with Christopher and Smex, which used to be the tank line of the UK team. And then, Bazooka Puppies, they had great players as well. Cloud9 EU, they had people like Gray and Neptuno, Mikey A, Nevix. Nevix back then was a DPS player. There's so many names. 123 had Hafakal and Finzi and Snillo. And eUnited had Cruz. Cruz, back when he used to play Genji and was on the DPS and Boombox with the support. It takes us back a long way. Things have changed a mighty amount. And the prize pool for Season 1 of Europe Contenders in 2017 was only $100,000. No, this year. And it was the premier competition in Europe. Now, obviously, it was overshadowed by things like Apex in Korea, and none of these would hit that height. Not like Team Envious did, where they went to prove themselves in Korea and did mighty well. But Team Gigantti came into this with a roster with Saita as their coach. This was an all-Finnish team, so this was Saita as their coach. He went on to be a coach at the Paris Eternal. Then Big Goose and Shaz, two names you will know a lot from the Gladiators, recently retired, the pair of them. Fraggy, the tank player, he used to be on the Philadelphia Fusion. Again, a very well name in the Overwatch scene, now retired and playing WoW competitively, I believe. Zappis on the Flex, or, well, it used to be Flex and those days, the off-tank role. And then Linksa and Davin as their DPS players. Now, there's only actually one of these players left playing Overwatch. There's only actually one of these players left, and that's Linksa. Obviously now joining up with the Vancouver Titans in the Overwatch League. And this is 4 years down the line now. And these players have a storied history. Like, Gigantti, this is what they were good at. They were good at creating players and making players, developing players, and then they would just become household names in EU. And this is what made Team Gigantti such a massive team. They came into this tournament, obviously as a kind of newbie, and Therefore, maybe they weren't underestimated, but they had a very good roster. But they were going against very good teams. The final of the 2017 Season 1 of Europe for Contenders would be Team Gigantti versus Misfits. And Team Gigantti would run out winners in a 4-3 match against Misfits. Massive, massive, massive match. Crazy. I mean, Gigantti actually didn't top the standings in the regular season for that Contenders season, because they did end up losing to Misfits in the group stages, and they actually got swept by Misfits 4-0. This was back in the day where it was always played 4 maps, so it was normally 3-1s, 4-0s, 3-2s, back in the original Overwatch League format. And yeah, they struck back in the playoffs, and Team Gigantti managed to beat Misfits 4-3 after sweeping 1-2-3 in the semi-finals. And this was massive, and this started off a massive era for Team Gigantti in Europe. Next, they would go on to conquer the Assembly Winter 2018 in Helsinki, taking the final 3-0 against ENCE Esports, and then came around the next season of Contenders. But this would be different because this was 2018 Contenders Season 1 Europe. This is after the Overwatch Contenders scene got a complete rebrand and the Overwatch League existed. The prize pool increased. There was more to play for in Contenders, but a lot of people had their players yoinked, including Team Gigantti. So their 2017 Contenders squad, Davin, Zappis, Fraggy, Big Goose, Shaz, Linksa, they all went. So Linksa went to the Houston Outlaws, quite obviously. Shaz and Big Goose went to the Los Angeles Gladiators, where they would stay for 3 years. Fraggy went to the Philadelphia Fusion, and Zappis would join up with the Florida Mayhem and the Misfits boys. So Davin was left on his own at Team Gigantti. It wasn't exactly great. So, Davin being the only remaining member, they had to create a new team. So who did they bring in? Well, first of all, Shadow2K to partner Davin. Shadow2K, massively good player in the DPS role back in the day. RCK would be the flex alongside LH Cloudy on the main tank. Ripper would be a support alongside the main support Massa. This again was a stacked roster. Majority from Finland apart from the Romanian Shadow2K. And it still just did wonders for this Team Gigantti squad. But it perhaps would not hit the heights that the 2017 squad did as they competed in the Overwatch League for the first time. So, with Overwatch Contenders at this point, we saw a bunch of new teams. Some teams transferred from the old Contenders like Gigantii, like Bazooka Puppies, like Team Singularity. But a lot of teams actually didn't, because they just couldn't, their teams were ripped apart, so there were quite a few disbands and stuff like that. Hence the team that was actually in that season called That's a Disband. It was a bit of a meme back then, but then we see teams from the European region come up. Teams we now know like Angry Titans, Young and Beautiful. And then there's teams that aren't even around now like Eagle Gaming, Copenhagen Flames, CIS Hope, August and Hungary, and then Mosaic Esports. But the big team that was invited out of nowhere, and this is what the Overwatch League introduced, was Academy Overwatch League teams. And so we have the birth of British Hurricane. And this will be the first Contender season that Academy team competed in, and the British Hurricane still exists to this day, as I'm sure you're probably aware. So, British Hurricane were the teams to look out for in this season of Contenders, because they actually assembled a stacked roster of Funny Astro, Bok1, Crusade, Fusions, Hafakal, Craggy and Kib, and a lot of these guys, again, went on to have chances at the Overwatch League and shots at the Overwatch League, and one of them you probably know is at the heights of the Overwatch League right now. So this team was to be feared, along with a bunch of other teams. But there were some missing teams like Misfits that didn't exist anymore because they got snapped up by Mayhem in the Overwatch League. So the question was, could Team Gigantti take advantage of this and dominate Contenders for seasons to come? Well, it wouldn't work out that way. Team Gigantti still did very, very well, but they struggled in the group stages, falling to heavy defeats against Angry Titans and British Hurricane. Both of those were 4-0s. Before then, they kind of swept the other teams in their groups. So they got a 4-0s against Singularity, against That's a Disband, and they also got a 3-1 against August and Hungary. So this actually meant that Gigantti went through in the last qualification place, in 4th in their group, which is a struggle for a team that had done so well previously, and Hurricane topped that group. to perhaps not too many people's surprise. So Gigantii went through to the knockout stages, and all of a sudden, it was like a switch flipped. So they sweep Eagle Gaming, they sweep Angry Titans, the people who had swept them before. And then Team Gigantii find themselves in the final of Contenders once again. But this time, it's against an entirely different beast. This is British Hurricane, and Team Gigantii lose to British Hurricane 4-3, an incredibly tight series once again for Gigantii in the finals. And this was an amazing season of EU Contenders. It really, really was. And Gigantii, they came up short for the first time, really. This was the first time they'd really lost in a competition. All the others previously, you know, the Assembly win to 2018, the previous season of Contenders, and the Aces ROG tournament, they'd all won. So this was the first time that they had to suffer a defeat. They go out of this into the Summer Assembly for 2018, go and win that and get a 3-0 in the final against Trailblazers, and then they would come back for the second season of 2018 Contenders in Europe. And this would be a different looking season once again, with a bunch of different teams coming in. Yes, you have the reappearance of August and Hungary, Copenhagen Flames and Eagle Gaming, but you would see new teams come in like Windstrike and Six Snakes, or Snakes as they were called, We Have Org and 1 Point. There'd be some different faces this time, but Team Gigantii would turn around their fortunes in the group stages of this tournament. And the funny thing about this tournament was the fact that British Hurricane were a completely different beast. They weren't powerful. In fact, they never even made it out of the group stage and ended up dropping down to Contenders Trials, which was a massive change in power levels in Contenders. Team Gigantii, however, dominated their group. An 18-2 record in maps and a 5-0 record in matches saw them top their Group B ahead of CIS Hope, Eagle Gaming and 1 Point getting through easily to the knockouts in this tournament, but it wouldn't go smoothly for them. Yes, they would get the 3-0 against Young and Beautiful in the quarterfinals, but it ended up losing to Eagle Gaming in the semi-finals, the eventual winners of that tournament, who overcame Angry Titans 4-1 in the grand final, and it was rough for Gigantii that season. It was rough. In a season where they were perhaps expected to win, considering the British Hurricane came up so short in very surprising fashion. So this was a surprise. But then we move on, and in 2018, it was actually structured so there were 3 seasons of Contenders. And so season 3 comes around, and there was actually a need for a slightly different roster for Team Gigantii in that season. They had to actually swap out LH Cloudy, who left for the Mayhem Academy. They brought in Milky Man on the main tank, and they also at this point had Lilbo as their support as well, and Visility in the DPS line, with Shadow 2K retiring. So, very interesting, because this meant Team Gigantii was much more diverse than it had been before. It wasn't an all-Finnish team, it was now mixed in with French and Dutch, even British influence in the coaches as well. So this was a very different looking Gigantii, but it was a Gigantii that worked. This time, British Hurricane would be back out of their jail and trials, and it wouldn't be a Hurricane again as powerful as we saw previously in the first season of 2018. Gigantii, however, was still very consistent. They got second place in their group, losing only 1 match in that group stage, and that match was to Samsung Morning Stars, who were the actual team that capped that group out. It was a 3-2 in the end. So Team Gigantii came in as second seed from Group A. They took on, yes, in the quarterfinals, British Hurricane. It was a rematch of the finals of the first season of 2018. It was a barnstormer, but it was 3-2 to Gigantii. Gigantii get their revenge and knock Hurricane out at the first chance. I am sure Gigantii enjoyed that one. They go on in the semi-finals to take on 1 Point and sweep them 3-0 before setting up a grand final against Angry Titans, which they would win 4-2 and reclaim their title of Contenders champions. 2 seasons they were out without the title, going all the way back to 2017 when they first won it, and then their second title came in 2018 season 3. But it would be their last. They would go to the FEL Overwatch Cup and get their win there. They would, however, come into the first season of 2019 Contenders. They would fail to get either of the 2 spots, them going over to the unbeaten Hurricane at the time, and then Angry Titans. And Gigantii, they finished third in that group stage. Going into the quarterfinals, they'd have to face Samsung Morning Stars, their nemesis from the previous season of Contenders. They beat them, but they went up against Angry Titans, and they ended up losing 3-1. Angry Titans would be the winners of Contenders that season, and this meant that once again Gigantii were unable to retain their crown, and therefore would have to try and regain it in Season 2 of that year, and it wouldn't go well. So at this point, EU Contenders was kind of struggling. The quality, perhaps you could say, was going down. However, Gigantii clapped back in the group stage of 2019 Season 2, where they got a 6-1 record and topped the group ahead of Clockwork Vendetta and HSL Esports, British Hurricane middle of the pack with Angry Titans the previous winners. And therefore, there was a change of guard once again in EU Contenders. We go into the quarterfinals, and they get a bye, because the rules around it were changed. And so Gigantii would enter at the semi-final stage, and they would face, once again, British Hurricane. Hurricane coming off the back of winning 3-1 against the previous champions, Angry Titans. They would get swept, the Hurricane. Gigantii was 3-0 with the British Hurricane. It would be a dark hour for the Hurricane team, and a massive boon for this Team Gigantti side as they looked to regain their title once again. They went into a final against HSL Esports, who had beaten in the semi-finals the odd boys of Clockwork Vendetta, who started an entire comp with what Clockwork Vendetta were doing in the EU at that time. But this wouldn't end nicely for Gigantii. They would end up claiming second place as they lose 4-1 to HSL Esports in the finals of that EU season. HSL Esports would claim a place in the Gauntlet, for the first Gauntlet ever, and Gauntlet was a masterclass of the best teams around, and Gigantii never made it to that tournament. This would be the last tournament Gigantii would take part in, and arguably HSL Esports went on in the Gauntlet to not do that well, because EU, to be quite honest, it wasn't that powerful. It really wasn't that powerful. So Gigantii, after this, they lost a lot of their rosters, right? A lot of their roster had been torn apart by different Overwatch League teams over the years. And so, in December of 2019, precisely the 23rd of December, Team Gigantti disbanded. So yeah, yesterday was the anniversary, the 1-year anniversary of Giganti's disbanding. Okay, whatever. So this was a team that actually, its total earnings rivals that of some Overwatch League teams, which is pretty crazy when you talk about prize money. But this meant that the current roster, the roster that was at that team when it disbanded, Davin has never found another team. Zappis retired, Milky Man went to Triumph, Zipper went to Niriki Esports, who were a new sort of Phoenix team that came out of the Giganti's Flames, and he ended up retiring. Leaf ended up retiring as well, I believe. Visility ended up retiring. Ripper is the only player that is still really at the forefront of things, because he's now at the rivals of Gigantii, British Hurricane, who have just completely won the Gauntlet in EU and won Season 1 of Contenders EU this season. So, what is to take away from this? Gigantii are a massive team, and their influence is felt throughout Overwatch. When we look at these names, Massa went on to be part of the Atlanta Reign. LH Cloudy went on to be part of the Paris Eternal. When you look at Shadow 2K, massive name in the community. Ripper, now part of the dominant British Hurricane, and possibly part of the London Spitfire next season. When you look at Linksa, Shaz, Big Goose, Fraggy, Zappis, Zuppe, they've all had time in the Overwatch League. And all of these players have been at the top of their game in EU or NA Contenders. And also, Lilbo, who was a support at Gigantii, went on to be a coach at the Toronto Defiant. So there is so much influence from Gigantii in the EU region, in OWL, in NA. It's a team that we must never forget, because it holds a very big legacy that survives to this day, and hopefully one day we may get to see Gigantii once more. But this has been it for this Overwatch Team Files. We've got plenty more to do, and I look forward to it. Look out for the video tomorrow. Tomorrow's Christmas Day, obviously, and that'll be a very nice video as well. I will, however, be changing things up over the next coming week, because I'm going to take a little break for a week just to get things sorted, but I will cover that more tomorrow. Merry Christmas to you all. Have a nice Christmas as well, and I will see you tomorrow with a nice, cozy little video on Christmas Day. But for now, thank you guys so much for watching the video. If you'd like to give a like, subscribe if you're new, and I will see you in the next video. See you then!